Hello everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're going to explore something that is just endlessly fascinating, the spectacular diversity of life on Earth. I mean, think about it for a second. From the deepest, darkest oceans to the highest freezing mountain peaks, our world is literally teeming with life. But how do scientists actually make sense of it all? How do they take this massive, chaotic web of living things and organize it into a beautifully structured, logical system? Well, that is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for making sense of the living world. We'll start with the sheer scale of biodiversity, then look at how scientists create a universal language. After that, we'll break down taxonomy versus systematics, climb the taxonomic hierarchy, and finally, look at some really cool real-world examples.
So, Section 1, the scale of biodiversity. Just how much life is actually out there.
When you step outside and just look around, the sheer ecological complexity of the natural world is enough to leave you completely speechless. The beauty of a galloping horse, giant flocks of migrating birds, or even an attacking shark, it all evokes this deep sense of wonder. But to put a hard number on it, there are currently between 1.7 to 1.8 million species that are known and described by scientists. This staggering variety of organisms is what we call biodiversity. And the wildest part? As we explore new areas, and honestly, even when we re-examine old ones, new organisms are being identified all the time. We are barely scratching the surface here.
Now, you really can't talk about the diversity of life without mentioning the giants who helped us understand it. Take Ernst Mayr, a legendary evolutionary biologist at Harvard University. This guy had a career spanning nearly 80 years. Mayr is often referred to as the Darwin of the 20th century because he pretty much single-handedly made the origin of species diversity the central driving question of evolutionary biology. He also pioneered the currently accepted definition of a biological species, so his work is literally the foundation for how we organize life today.
Moving on to Section 2, creating a universal language, how we name all these living organisms.
So with 1.8 million discovered species, we run into a massive logistical nightmare. How on earth do scientists from completely different parts of the world communicate about these organisms without getting totally lost in translation? The answer is standardization. If we rely on local common names, it's just pure chaos. A bird or a bug in one language or region might mean something completely different just a few towns over, let alone across the globe. To fix this, scientists set up international procedures to assign one unique scientific name to each known organism. For plants, this is governed by the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, or ICBN, and for animals, taxonomists use the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, or ICZN. This basically guarantees that every single organism has just one globally recognized name.
And that brings us to the actual rules of naming. It's a brilliant system given to us by Carolus Linnaeus called binomial nomenclature. Binomial just means two names. It's pretty straightforward. Rule number 1, the first word is the generic name, or genus. Rule number 2, the second word is the specific epithet. Rule 3, these names are generally in Latin, and they're printed in italics or separately underlined if you're handwriting them just to show their Latin origin. And finally, Rule 4, the genus always starts with a capital letter, while the specific epithet starts with a lowercase letter.
Let's look at how brilliantly this illustrates the rules coming together. Take the scientific name for the mango, Mangifera indica. Mangifera is the genus, so it's capitalized. Indica is the specific epithet, all lowercase. Both words are in italics. But hey, notice that little abbreviation right at the end? Lin? That is the author citation. It tells us that Carolus Linnaeus was the very first person to scientifically describe this specific species. It's kind of like a neat little nod to biological history right there in the name.
All right, Section 3, taxonomy versus systematics. How do we start grouping these organisms?
Now that we know how to name them, how do we group them? This brings us to two closely related but distinct fields of study. Think of taxonomy as the foundational groundwork. It involves characterizing an organism's internal and external structure, identifying it, classifying it into a convenient category, and giving it that proper binomial name we just talked about. Systematics, though, zooms out a bit further. It takes all of that taxonomic data and adds a completely new, crucial layer, evolutionary relationships. So systematics isn't just about what an organism is, it's about how it relates to everything else that has ever lived on Earth.
In fact, the word systematics actually comes from the Latin word systema. Carolus Linnaeus loved this concept so much that he used it as the title of his famous publication, Systema Naturae, because ultimately it is all about arranging life systematically.
Section 4, the taxonomic hierarchy.
Let's climb the ladder of life.
You see, classification isn't just a single step, it's a ladder, and each step on this ladder represents a rank or category formerly called a taxon. Let's start at the bottom and climb all the way to the top. The lowest and most specific category on our taxonomic ladder is the species. A species is basically a group of individual organisms that share fundamental morphological similarities. They are so alike that you can easily distinguish them from other closely related species. For example, for us human beings, our specific epithet is sapiens.
So, taking a step up, we see how this builds. The next step is the genus. A genus is simply an aggregate of closely related species. Think of it like a tight-knit family unit. The lion is Panthera leo, the tiger is Panthera tigris, and the leopard is Panthera pardus. They are absolutely different species, but they share so many features that they get bundled together into the single genus Panthera. And for us humans, our genus is Homo.
Taking another step up, we hit the family rank. A family groups together related genera. But notice, as we move higher, the organisms are going to share fewer and fewer similarities. For instance, the genus Panthera, your lions and tigers, is grouped with the genus Felis, your domestic house cats, into the family Felidae. But dogs, well, they have distinct differences from cats, right? So they get their own separate family, Canidae.
Next up is order. An order is an assemblage of families that still exhibit a few similar characters. Taking our previous example, even though the cat family, Felidae, and the dog family, Canidae, are different, they both eat meat and share certain fundamental anatomical traits. Because of that, taxonomists group both of those families together into the higher animal order known as carnivora.
Right above order is class. A class bundles together related orders. So the order Carnivora, with our cats and dogs, is placed right alongside the order Primata, which includes monkeys, gorillas, and us humans. What actually brings them together at this level? Well, they all have body hair and external ears, so they all belong to the class Mammalia.
Stepping up again, we have phylum for animals, or division for plants. Classes are grouped into a phylum based on very broad shared features. Look at fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. They all look incredibly different from one another, but they all share a notochord and a dorsal hollow neural system at some point in their development. Because of that single shared reality, they all fall under one phylum, Chordata.
And finally, we reach the very top of the hierarchy, the kingdom. This is the highest, broadest category there is. All animals, regardless of their phylum, fall into the kingdom Animalia. All plants, from all divisions, fall into the kingdom Plantae. It is the ultimate grouping of living things on Earth. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this fundamental rule of the hierarchy. As you move up from species to kingdom, the number of common characteristics shared by the organisms decreases. At the very bottom, a tiger and a lion share tons of traits. But at the top, a tiger and a sea sponge are in the exact same kingdom, but they barely share anything at all. Because of this, the higher the category, the harder it is to determine those evolutionary relationships, and the classification becomes much, much more complex.
Okay, Section 5, Real-World Classification Examples. Let's see all this in action.
Now, what's really interesting here is pulling all of this abstract Latin terminology together and looking at how it operates in the real world. You can see exactly where some familiar organisms fit side by side in this massive filing system. Just look at humans. We go from Homo up to Hominidae, Primata, Mammalia, and Chordata. Then look at a simple housefly. Its scientific name is Musca domestica. It belongs to the genus Musca, family Muscidae, order Diptera, class Insecta, and phylum Arthropoda. And we can do the exact same thing for plants. Wheat is Triticum aestivum, sitting elegantly in the Poaceae family all the way up to the Angiospermae division. It just proves that no matter how drastically different two organisms might be, this universal language can categorize them flawlessly.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've gone from the stunning reality of 1.8 million known species through the strict rules of binomial nomenclature, and we climbed the entire taxonomic ladder from species all the way up to kingdom. But remember, biology is not a finished science, not even close. There are millions of living organisms hiding in deep oceans and dense rainforests that we haven't even laid eyes on yet. So, with millions of species still undiscovered, what completely new, bizarre, and beautiful branches do you think will add to the tree of life in the future? Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.